Okay, hello everybody. Whoever want to be seated, please do it now. So we can start, because one of the speakers has to go a bit earlier. So, good morning, or midday. Is it midday? Midday, okay. I'm Papageorgiou. I'm a journalist for Cyprus News Agency and CYBC, and I will be the moderator for this panel. They told me I should be short, specific, so I will read what I prepared for an introduction to this panel. And I'm sure that everybody knows who are the speakers, but I will tell them when they will be ready to speak. So, the title of this panel is Architecture of Negotiations. It's a follow-up discussion on last year's similar topic, the negotiation process design. I think only Mr. Nami was previous year, right? Okay. In a difficult and murky time like the one we are living in, I don't know if we can even speak of dialogue. A dialogue that, at least in the Cyprus problem, who stopped 7 years ago, and since then we have been hearing positions that, at least to my ears, are being repeated or brought back. An architectural or structured dialogue is a necessity and a subject of discussion on an academic level. I'm looking at Ipek. Except that in the Cyprus problem, we have exhausted all levels. Or maybe we didn't. I look forward to answers to this question from our speakers today. I was one of the journalists who followed the whole last process in the negotiations from Montpellier 1 to 11 days in Crown Montana. It was 11, right? It was not easy at all to manage the information, the process, the feeling, and the result. Then I understood the saying, we went to the spring and we didn't drink water. I think there is something similar in the Turkish, but I didn't find it. And the need to go to the gym. I'm still going to the gym. We haven't had any water yet. I don't know if the phrase 7 years each is true, and this each will end at the end of 2024. But we can now, here, make an attempt at an architectural dialogue. We can talk about how negotiations can start, why they should start, if we want to end up somewhere, and where that is. So, since the two former negotiators are here with us today, Mr. Andreas Mavroyiannis and Mr. Ozdil Nami, I would like to start with them, and I will put forward some questions about Crown Montana. Since we're hearing that we should continue from where we left off in Crown Montana, I would like to ask them both, they were there negotiating, where did we leave off in Crown Montana, why we didn't have a result, and what can we do now, here from now on, to get things started again. You have 7 minutes to answer, and then I will go forward with Menelaou, the negotiator of the Greek Cypriot side, and Ipek Borman, academician. That's why I look at her before. And they will have also 7 minutes to answer my questions, and then there is going to be a second round with their comments about what they heard here. And if you have any questions, we can do it at the end. Mr. Nami will have to leave in an hour, So I hope we will be on time. Mr. Nami, you would like to start?
Of course. Thanks to the Cyprus Forum for organizing the event and having us here, and thanks for all the attendees to come here and listen to us today. I really believe in the benefit of holding such meetings. We need to generate fresh ideas, new ideas. I understand that UN is intensively engaged to bring the leaders together one way or another. I was happy to hear that there is going to be a get-together in New York in a couple of weeks' time, so that's positive news. And we hope that they take this opportunity seriously and take a step forward. I'll briefly answer your questions, and then I will concentrate on what I want to say to the panel.
Every time is the same.
Well, being a politician, I'm very
experienced. Yes, I understand. I'm also a
that.
journalist. I can stop you whenever I want.
Yes. Well, you asked three specific questions.
Yeah.
Where were we in Crans-Montana? Why couldn't we finish? And what needs to be done next? I want to concentrate on the third part. The first question is easy enough. We were on the verge of solving the Cyprus problem. Secretary General said the solution was on the table. What was lacking to cross the finishing line was political will. So the content of the solution is, I'm not going to claim 100%, but to a very large extent was formed. It was an extremely good teamwork. And both Andreas and Menelaos is here. We worked together for many years, and I felt personally, I don't know how they felt, but we were working as a Cypriot team to finish the Cyprus problem, and that's why I think that spirit allowed us to achieve unprecedented convergences that allowed us to tell the guarantor powers that we are ready to invite you to sit together and engage in the final give and take, and to wrap it up. So why couldn't we do it? There are different ideas. I don't think anyone has the perfect answer to it. My personal answer I give is that there was not a big consequence of leaving the negotiating table like that, not taking the deal on the table. So it was easy to get cold feet and leave. Whoever got the cold feet got it for whatever reason, I don't know. I'm not that interested, but it happened. It happened, and we couldn't show the necessary last political courage to sign up to what was on the table. Secretary General Guterres, I think, summed it up in his framework in a very nice way. 6 paragraphs. So if you want to see what was the remaining main issues, it's there, it's public information. And when you look at it, you can see what the final step should entail, what kind of areas we should focus and engage in a give and take. So looking ahead, I think we have to remind ourselves what we basically agree on. Why are we engaged in all this activity? There are different ideas about the solution of the Cyprus problem. Some support a federal solution, some support two-state solution now, some support a return to a Republic of Cyprus, different ideas. But I think one thing that almost everyone says that they agree is we have to end the status quo. Status quo is not sustainable. We have to end the status quo. So looking ahead, I am asking myself, okay, that's a good starting point, but what are some of the basic rules, basic guidelines on ending a status quo? I think we have to agree on some basic parameters of how to end the current status quo. In my mind, the rule number 1 is it must be a peaceful method. There must be no use of arms, no violence. Second, it must be done through mutual consent. We have to convince each other. Nobody should force us to do it. That would be my rule number 2. And rule number 3, it must be achieved within a reasonable time frame. That makes sense. That makes sense. That allows us to still talk about a mutually agreed solution, a united Cyprus, because in the very long run, this may even become in itself a fantasy if we wait too long. So three basic parameters must be observed. Then we have to define what does ending the status quo means. So we have to define this answer, because to different people it may mean different things. So to answer this question, we must define what exactly we mean when we use this expression, status quo. For me, from my point of view, for the purposes of Cyprus negotiations, status quo means, the thing that we want to end, means that currently there are two states on the island. One is recognized and the other is not. And this is problematic. And there are many problems that flows from this. And this is the status that we want to end. It must end so by implication, it means that we have to create a solution whereby we either have one recognized state internationally or two. We cannot have one recognized and one unrecognized. So we have to go back either creating one for everyone or two on the island and normalize relationships. So this is what I understand when I talk about ending the status quo. We must shoot for something which creates a different atmosphere, either in the form of one united country with one international identity or two. So then we come to the question, how do we go about doing it? I think in my previous interventions, I have defined an approach, and I have an American education, so I like anagrams. So I call it the neat approach. It also implies some cleanness. So what is this neat approach? Well, first, we have to negotiate. We have to negotiate based on what we have achieved. But we have to negotiate. Resume the negotiations. Second, we have to have an end time, reasonably short enough. Then we have to have arbitration. So the A in need is arbitration, because there might be, at the end of the time, still things outstanding. And then we need to agree on some terms. Terms agreed before on what will happen if one or the other side fails to deliver, either by, say, rejecting the solution at the referendum or abruptly leaving the negotiating table. So this implies that the new negotiation process must be a contractual negotiation. Okay. It must be a contractual negotiation. Its goal, its parameters, its terms must be predefined, and it should be seen just like when you want to build a house. You don't sit with your contractor for months and years to build a good relationship and build confidence, trust each other. No, you get to know each other. You say, okay, my friend, this is what I want. You define it. This is the price, and these are the consequences, the terms, if one of the parties fails to deliver. So a contractual negotiation. This is the kind of approach that we need. If we can create it, if the leaders, when they sit together with a facilitation of the UN, focus on creating this, then we will find a way to end the status quo in one way or the other. Okay. All the other roads will lead to continuation of the status quo in one way or another. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nami. Mr. Mavroyiannis, we would like to hear about Crans Montana. Did you agree? Do you agree with
Of course, I never agree with Ozdil. But, if we were to agree, we would have solved the Cyprus problem.
No.
But you have to understand that here at this panel, you have a band of brothers and sisters. All of us, we were involved in the negotiation in a very constructive way. And, there was something extraordinary that was happening during our time as negotiators, is that each one of us, he was putting himself in the shoes of the other and was trying to understand exactly why the other is saying this, what is the meaning, what are the implications, etc. So, it's not...
So why we didn't have a result?
Okay, this is the result will come. The result will come.
You have different sizes, I think.
No, but
different sizes.
No, of course, we were trying in the negotiation to turn everything into black, meaning that
that points are still
agreement, when my positions were in blue, Ozdil's positions were in red, and the idea was to turn everything
in black,
which would mean agreement on everything. In Crown Montana, fundamentally, if we don't want to repeat anecdotal, narratives, etc., what happened is that we were not able to cover the distance between the acceptance by Turkey of the notion that the system of guarantees is not sustainable and the actual implication of withdrawal of guarantees and troops. So there was this fundamental movement which was triggered at the end of the day, and the High Commissioner is here. In January, in Montpellier 3, Jonathan Allen, presenting the position of the United Kingdom, said for the first time, we believe that the system of guarantees is not sustainable. Building on this, we were in Crown Montana with the ideas of the Secretary General, and there was some movement on the part of Turkey to accept for the first time ever to discuss it and to negotiate this issue. This was the big breakthrough, but we did not manage to go as far as to have an understanding on the way to put it into practice and what it entails for the ones and the others. So if you want to stay away from the respective narratives, I heard earlier this day that, Anastasiadis left the table, but I saw him with Andreas at the end of the meeting. How did he leave? So it's not exactly that way. It's a bit more complicated. So it is not to say that there are no responsibilities, but the most important thing is that we came, as Ozdil was saying, very close. We needed to do a bit more. The idea being that if we were to manage to have an agreement on the 6 points of the Secretary General, and we were very close, we would have a strategic agreement which was not per se the solution, but this would render the settlement irreversible, and because the remaining issues were not fundamental. And in this last phase, everything would be possible. Even me, who is fundamentally against any idea of arbitration, of third-party intervention, etc., if it is for secondary issues, it's not the end of the world. The process would be irreversible. So we didn't manage then for all those reasons, and since then, the effort is to continue where we left in Crown Montana. Now, do we have the same reading about where we left in Crown Montana? Not exactly. However, if all of us want to be honest on the fundamental issues, we know where we were. Let's not start, but yes, this was the document of the 30th, this was the document. Okay, you can spend the years talking about these kind of things. What matters here is that if you ask me and Ozdil about where we were, we can tell you. Not based on documents, but based on what we really negotiating and on being able to rely on the word of the other. Because what requires in order to solve the problem is a minimum of trust and confidence and believing in the solution and believing that you are on the same boat and you are trying to achieve concrete results. Of course, if we enter into details, I don't agree with Ozdil that we need to fix the terms of the divorce before we start negotiation. So it's another story. But he is right that we cannot repeat the same process as in the past, open-ended and without a sense of orientation. All these are elements on which we see eye to eye. But at the same time, for me, it is also very important and even more important not to consider the negotiating problem into isolation. It's not an issue where you have the two negotiators and the negotiating teams talking completely outside of the society, of the context of the country and the broader geopolitical context. For me, and some of you know that this was my fundamental idea when I was a candidate for the presidency. It's about creating what we call the organic conditions for peace, where you can, by adding on all the time, create an environment where it will be possible to sort out the issues and then have a better understanding of what we are talking about. Because it's very easy to demonize by communal, by zonal federation and this. But what will happen if this does not go? Listen, there are problems in all political systems. What we need to understand in this country is that if there is goodwill, the fact that from time to time you are going to face an impasse is not the end of the world. Is not the end of the world. You need to be able to sort out your institutions in a way that overall the system works. And if we have some issues, you know, the United States are talking day and night about the decisions of the Supreme Court. Fair enough, okay? We'll never agree. Doesn't matter. What we need is to have a system, and in particular, since the accession of Cyprus into the European Union, I mean, the issues are becoming, solvable. There is nothing that fundamentally would destroy the state, and you can have through the freedoms of the European Union, through the fundamental freedoms, through human rights, and through, if you like, proportionality and subsidiarity, a system that will work very, very well.
Thank you. So now I would like, since Mr. Mavroyiannis talked about society, I would like to ask Ipek Borman about the society. Is civil society involved or should be involved in the negotiation process, or we will face the danger for everybody to be a negotiator outside the table? And what about the women factor? I mean, we are hearing a lot about how the women can contribute in this process. What can women do different than men and contribute really in this process?
Yeah, thank you very much. Speaking of Crown Montana, it's been more than 7 years
for everybody.
It's been more than 7 years, but I remember that night very vividly as well, because I was not in the room myself, but we were waiting outside. Of course, we as the Turkish Cypriot side, we were a bit pessimistic because of, the latest developments there, but we had nothing else but to be hopeful, because for us, I mean, yes, the status quo is not static. Yes, the status quo is ever changing. But at the same time, we feel the urgency of a solution because our very daily lives are affected by this non-settlement. Maybe it's not that much for the Greek Cypriots, but you know, the ongoing non-settlement of the problem, we see it in our education, we see it in our cultural lives, we see it in our social lives, economic lives, political lives, whatever. So we feel the unsustainability of the situation very much. And so, yes, we were expecting with hope that something would come out. And when the you know, leaders together with the negotiators, they started to come out of the room and we saw the faces, we of course felt devastated. And I remember one delegate member saying, okay, let's go back to business as usual. Let's go back to our you know, businesses. And at that instant, I thought, we have nowhere to go. I mean, yeah, everyone would go somewhere. You know, Greek Cypriots would go to their internationally recognized states. Brits would go to their states. You know, UN is it's an organization. They are trying to help all the conflicts in the world, so they have also their jobs. But I felt that we didn't have nothing else to do, and as a person who you know, was doing this job, who was involved in the Cyprus problem professionally, I mean, it was really devastating. So 7 years have passed. We are still talking about the same things. And, you know,
Sorry, but we are discussing the same things for 50 years.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm talking from my own perspective,
Okay, yeah,
of
yeah.
course. I
Let's go to
mean,
this
as
exercise.
Cypriots, we were born into this problem, and we have been dealing with it all our lives, just like our parents did. But another striking thing for me after Crown Montana was to see that we came back and people continued their lives as if nothing happened. Of course, for the Turkish Cypriots, there was a lot of frustration again, especially after 2004 unplanned referenda. We had this frustration, but continuing to build upon that frustration, you know, really left people with a fatigue that they cannot even recover today. So when you see the disconnect between the negotiating table on the one hand and the respective societies on the other hand, that also, you know, was really striking for me. I mean, the established, you know, structure of the negotiations, this high-level, leader-led, track one level negotiations, that cannot be continued. And we should be, you know, taking some lessons from that. And we need to find ways to engage the civil society, and not only the civil society, but also the wider societies, the wider public, because it's about their lives. And most of the Cypriots today don't have any idea about the emerging federation that we came to the, you know, edge of finalizing in Crown Montana. They don't know how a federation will reflect upon their lives. So it just sounds like a slogan. So therefore, whatever, you know, we do from now on, we should also pay attention to engage the respective publics on both sides, to find mechanisms to involve them, to make them know about the developments with regard to their own lives and their futures, and to start, make them realize that this is something they should be owning. This is something that should not be left only, only to leaders or a group of people. And, this also included me. I mean, I was part of that, small number of the elite group, and I can see that this was something that we didn't take into consideration, and we should be taking into consideration in order to make people realize that they need to take up the responsibility, they need to own the negotiations, and they need to own the politics of the Cyprus problem, because it's about them. It's about them. And also as a woman, I was a lucky person to have been involved in the negotiations. As someone who studied international relations. But what I have always felt was that, and because maybe we have traditional societies, we have to accept this. We live in patriarchal societies on both sides, and women have always been absent at the negotiating table as well as in the politics of the Cyprus problem. This does not mean that we didn't have women experts sitting at the negotiation table. We clearly had. I was one of them. But having women sitting at the negotiating table did not mean, or does not mean, that women are effectively represented at the negotiating table. We need to adopt and include a gender perspective in the negotiations, which has always been absent as well, unfortunately. And, when we look around the world at the moment with ongoing wars, conflicts, especially after the pandemic, we realized how we live in a very unpredictable world, and that uncertainty is prevailing, in all of us. So I know that it's not easy to reach to a certain, a certainty, but at least, we can broaden our perspective and to see that sustainability of life is an all-encompassing phenomenon. We have wars and conflicts, we have climate crisis, we have environmental problems, we have many existential threats going on, and we cannot think the Cyprus problem at the formal level from the perspective of negotiations in an isolated way. We cannot make a differentiation between gender equality and the Cyprus problem, or environmental sustainability and energy sustainability. So we have to, I think, broaden our perspective and also include, the wider societies in this discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. Nobody lasted 7 minutes. You understand what will happen if we start the negotiation. So, last but not least, Mr. Menelaou, who is the former negotiator, and I think for the first... Current, yes.
Have not become former yet.
No.
Something happened today.
I did not fire him. And I think he's the first one who has the same age with the Cyprus problem. So how does it feel?
Well, it feels the sense of responsibility is the same, I believe, irrespective of which generation do we belong, because there is an equal realization, I believe, among those Cypriots that share the same vision for the future of Cyprus, that the current situation would need to be overcome. And there is at the same time a sense of realization of the need to do what's in our hand from our respective capacities so that we increase the possibilities for this to eventually materialize. But let me begin by thanking the organizers for inviting me and by expressing my pleasure for being part of this panel of like-minded people with regard to the vision that we have for the future of Cyprus, even though there might be some different positions with regard to specific aspects. And let me also say that since we are now at a very delicate moment with an upcoming meeting, which, as has been announced, is going to take place on 15th of October under the UN Secretary General with the leaders of the two communities, I'm going to be brief in the comments that I am going to offer, because I believe that what is required now is to do more and to speak less, at least from those that are more directly involved in what is going on for the revival of a formal process and hopefully also the prospect for a comprehensive solution. With regard to the past, my comment would be that at least when I remember, when I recall past efforts, I do that with a prevailing sense of appreciation about what has been accomplished, along with, of course, the sadness for the fact that it didn't work, and also with a sense of responsibility about what should be done now, drawing from the experiences of the past, so that we ensure that we overcome, that we learn from this experience, and this time we ensure that we increase the possibilities for a renewed effort to be successful, and this is the spirit with which we are approaching the current ongoing effort. With regard to what is primarily needed in the current circumstances, my view is that first and foremost we need to uphold the most fundamentals. And among them, the most fundamental is what has been described throughout the years as the historic compromise, the framework, the basis upon which we can overcome the current situation, the status quo, and we can establish a unified Cyprus, and that is the bizonal, bicommunal federation. Anything that is deviating from this very fundamental compromise that has been upheld throughout the years cannot be expected to contribute positively to the effort. I know, and we have heard repeatedly, that because of the fact that throughout the 50 years that had passed, we had been negotiating on the basis of this context and we have been unsuccessful, then this should be considered to have exhausted its prospects, and that it should therefore be abandoned. And what is, I believe, strange, to put it this way, is that this argument is being heard by those who had never believed in this vision. They had never believed in the vision of the reunification of Cyprus, and they would have hoped that this historic compromise would had never been born, would have never existed, and who, even though it had been made, it had been done, and negotiations were taking place upon that basis, had in fact never contributed towards its materialization. Why? Because the only two most productive periods in which the respective negotiations were taking place between delegations that were talking to each other, not past each other, were the periods 2008-2010 and the period 2015-2017, and that is why we now are in the position to say that we have a significant acquis of previous efforts that would need to be upheld. The convergences that I agree are recorded in the Secretary General's report of September 2017, very precisely, very accurately, that would also have to be upheld, and that a renewed effort should focus on how do we cover the remaining distance. With regard to the prospects, the difficulties are there. I believe everyone can have a sense of the obstacles that would need to be overcome because of the past unsuccessful attempts, because of the current positions, and the conditions that are put for a resumption of negotiation that are deviating from this fundamental basis that I have mentioned before. But I believe that at the same time, the fact that the UNSG has decided to commence an effort through the appointment of a personal envoy who has carried out 4 rounds of talks with those involved in Cyprus and beyond, who had submitted a report last July to the UNSG with the content of these contacts that she had carried out, and perhaps with some ideas about how we can identify and undertake future steps, and the fact that the UNSG has decided to hold the meeting, and he has insisted and persisted in that until he had accomplished it, and the meeting is going to take place, are good indications that we are going to be able to identify next tangible steps, also making use in the wider context in which we are operating of factors that can catalytically contribute towards creating the necessary win-win conditions for all involved, so that the overcoming of the current situation will be more beneficial for all rather than its continuation, and initiatives have been taken in the context of EU-Turkey relations, and perhaps other opportunities and possibilities might be there for us to exploit in other directions. And I will leave it to that for my introductory remarks, and then
Okay.
we can comment.
Thank you very much. Do we know the menu?
Sorry?
Do we know the menu? No, we don't. So, yeah, any allergies? So I have one question, common question, and it has to do with the circumstances in our region. We cannot talk about Cyprus problem resolving or dialogue without noting that there are several conflicts in our area. So do you think that the current situation, not the former, can help now to start again the negotiations in Cyprus problem? I mean, who will pay attention to the Cyprus problem, a 50-year-old conflict, since we have all this happening around Israel, Lebanon, Iran, Syria, whatever? Menelaou?
Well, I think that they are yet another reminder of the imperative need to have a revival of the formal political process, and we know from the discussions that we are having with interlocutors in the UN, in the EU, in other actors that can contribute towards this direction, that this is a sense that is also shared by them, that the situation now in the regional geopolitical and international geopolitical landscape and the escalation of tensions and the competitions are yet another reminder of the imperative need to create the circumstances so that we have a formal political process. By the way, we do have a process in Cyprus. It has not yet come to the point where we have been able to activate the main political track, but we do have the track 2 going on, and through that channel we are attempting, and we have tried to shift also the discussion towards the main political track, so far unsuccessfully, but we are going to persist until we get to the point where it will be possible to have a formal resumption of the main political track as well. But I think the message should be for all that the only sustainable path forward is through political processes that create the conditions for sustainable political solutions. And that when this is exhausted or it is not being pursued, then we end up in situations where there is complications, contradictions, escalation, and transition to much more unpleasant developments, including warfare.
Okay, Mr. Nami.
I think it's a reminder of not only the need to resume, but to finish the Cyprus issue. For me, that's the critical thing.
Why you use this verb, finish?
Why?
Yeah.
Because
Finish.
I want it to be done.
Finish.
As I said, that's one thing that we seem to be in agreement, that the status quo is unsustainable. It must end one way or another, because simply resuming negotiations is no longer good enough. We have done that for 50 years, even more, and each failure results in the situation becoming worse and relations in becoming worse and the spirits being broken. So we cannot afford that anymore, because when that happens, it is bad for Cyprus, it's bad for region, because avenues of cooperation start collapsing, as we are witnessing right now. And things are changing. We could have never imagined, for example, United States removing the embargo on the Republic of Cyprus, Turkey becoming upset with it and starting taking precautions against it. So we are, each failed attempt makes the situation even worse. So our focus should not only be on resumption, but about finishing, to crossing the deadline. That's why I keep saying that we need to have a contractual negotiation process which specifies that I fully agree that there is a well-defined basis. It must be fully respected. We must resume negotiations from where they were left off with the goal of achieving a bizonal, bicommunal federation. But this must be given a specific time, an arbitration mechanism, and then people must be asked, if you don't like this, it's your democratic right, but then you can't hold the other one hostage. We need two legitimate bodies on the island in that case, which we can establish good relations and cooperation, because the region needs normalization. And that's where we need to head, I think.
Okay, Mr. Mavroyiannis.
You know, for me, the fundamentals of the Cyprus problem have not changed. Whatever happens in the region, of course, and this is dramatic, I'm not saying the contrary, but this does not affect what is our duty to do in Cyprus. And, you know, if you hear what people tell you, you know, the Greek Cypriot will tell you, you know, Turkey will collapse, it will be divided into 2, into 3, into 4, and there will be a Kurdish state, and there will be this. You know, these doom scenarios are, at the end of the day, scenarios that allow to do nothing. It is fundamental for us to understand that rain or shine in our area, we have more things that unite us than things that divide us. And we need, you know, we have so much in common, including, I have to tell you something from the previous discussion about Northern Ireland. You know, I was there in '98 on the Good Friday Agreement, you know, I know quite well. I have to tell you that their situation, when it comes to the human feelings, was worse than ours. There you had hate between people. Here you don't have, with some extremist people. We don't hate each other. We understand more or less each other. So we can build our future together. And fundamentally, you know, whatever happens in the region, we can be a positive example in order to change the whole region and not just be here and suffer the consequences of what is happening around. Because, you know, we're a small place. If we always say the geopolitics and this and that, we will never take our shape, our future in our hands and shape our future. And also something which is also very important, you know, we cannot go on and saying always is the foreign factor, is the UN, is this and that. It's us. It's for us to do things. And we have seen, for instance, just a little example, and I'm talking under the control of Colin, I mean, Mari and Solveig and Sergei, who were with us in Crown Montana, that, you know, at the end of the day, last year, for instance, there were all those crazy ideas about, you know, the EU doing this and that and how we're going to shape and how, you know. The international community will, Angelina, the EU, you know the EU better than anybody else. The international community and our own space, the European Union, are always there and ready to support something. But this something has to be here, and needs to start and needs to be shaped by the people that are going to live here. There is no Deus ex machina, and this does not change with what is happening in the region.
Okay, thank you. Ipek, just give me a moment. Mr. Nami has to go in 5 minutes. Do we have any question for Mr. Nami? Okay, Ipek, sorry. Okay.
Oh, it's okay.
No,
Yeah,
I think we have 10 minutes or still.
No.
We need to be able
He has to.
Okay.
He has to.
I
5
think
minutes.
he has
So,
to
yes.
take all the time he needs because.
Yeah.
My name is Kemal Baykallı. I really wanted his observations also. You know, the previous project was defined, the process was defined as a Cypriot-led process. And now we have been observing that the Greco-Turkish relations is kind of shaping the current, or I don't want to preempt, but it's playing an important role in this. So my question to Mr. Nami, and of course relevant to maybe Mr. Menelaos will also answer, was, is it, number one, is it now not Cypriot-led process? Is it led by Turkey and Greece? Are we back to 1959 and 1960? This is the first question. And my second question is, you know, how useful to think that the current leaders, particularly the Turkish Cypriot leader, is really out of picture and he's simply taking instructions from Turkey. You have been hearing this argument a lot, so it would be very interesting from your perspective, Mr. Nami, also to analyze these two.
Okay. Do we have other for Mr. Nami?
Yes, I think so, if I may. My name is Angelina Akos, European Union. A great panel. Thank you so much for doing this, and I hope many will listen and hear. As Andreas said, full support from the European Union, from the back. This is very important. I think it's a very important signal that the Secretary General is doing this on the 15th. For negotiations to start, at some point, all of you know, you need political will and political space for the sides.
Okay.
Maybe just a quick answer from all of you, how you assess on both sides.
Okay.
The will and
It is related with Mr. Tatar's stance. Okay, Mr. Nami.
not specifically. But
Yeah. I understand.
If
You
there's
are a
one
diplomat.
more,
I am
I
not.
can take one more and we'll quickly
There is
answer.
one more. No.
Very
Okay.
excellent. So I managed to convince many people. All right.
Nobody is asking about what you said. Ipek, you will answer also.
My honest opinion, I wouldn't expect anything to happen in the upcoming year with the current Turkish Cypriot leadership in particular. I think they are deeply entrenched in their position. And even if they would find a way to return to the negotiating table in one format or the other, I wouldn't put a big bet that would lead to anything. We need a new leadership with a firm new vision to establish a bizonal bicommunal federation. However, even the leadership who promotes that vision in the north are very determined not to go for the sake of negotiations, but to end the status quo. And if you turn the newspapers today, on the headlines, We have Mr. Tufan Erhürman, for example, who in very explicit terms says that if he gets elected, he will not go back for the sake of resumption of negotiations, but only if a priori he is assured that this is going to be the final game and there will not be a return to status quo. So this is the method. So, to come to the question, whether there is political will and there is political space, I don't think within our current leadership there is this political will. Whether Turkey has it or not, I think fundamentally they do, but they don't see the political space ripe enough to make their move, to open their hand, and they are expecting maybe the end of the American elections, maybe some more dynamics to settle in the region, and also the Turkish Cypriot elections to be over. So we are right now planting seeds, in my belief, for to have a successful one final attempt. And that space, that environment is being prepared. We need to be patiently working for that. That's why I believe events like this are extremely important. And the name of the game is, unfortunately, again, patience. But I do believe fundamentally everyone in this region needs this settlement, and it will happen. It is just taking a bit longer than we would wish for it. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nami. If you want to go.
So, as I said, I deeply apologize. I have a plane to catch. That's why and I wish you all the success for the remaining session. And thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nami. Have a safe trip. I think you can go there.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Bye. Oh, so we will go back to. Thank you. Thank you very much. We will go to Ipek. If you can comment
very
shortly and
briefly.
answer the questions, and then.
Yeah, very briefly. So, this year the UN Secretary General's speech at the opening of the UN General Assembly, I think it was very interesting and very powerful. He made a true critic of the international order, and he said the status quo is static until it isn't. So I think it's how I feel about where we live, where we stand, and you know, how far we can go. I mean, we live in a geography, I mean a geostrategic location. When you look at the map, you see how volatile it is. And on top of that, of course, on top of this volatility and, you know, living in a very insecure, unpredictable environment, we have the Cyprus problem as well. So, yes, I think that geopolitics is very much affecting us because, you know, all the actors involved, I mean, in all the problems, in all the conflicts in this region somehow, you know, try to position themselves sometimes. And when we have this polarization, of course, between, on the one hand, Greece and the Greek Cypriot side, and on the other hand, Turkish Cypriot side and Turkey, then we will always be prone, you know, to these kinds of polarizations that can very easily, you know, lead us to conflict. And it happens in an instant blink, you know. I mean, nobody expected 7th of October events before they happened. I mean, we were going through a normalization, you know, process between Israel and some Arab countries. So unfortunately, things happen, whether we like them or not. So we should be resilient towards these challenges as Cyprus, and also, you know, the existential threats that await us, like the climate change and the other the important global challenges.
Okay, what about the questions? Political will, political space, and the questions of Kemal?
Well, about
The Turkish Cypriot leaders' stance?
so we have to wait and see, because there is just, I don't see political will on the side of, you know, on both sides. I mean, I don't see any political determination and will to once and for all, you know, really solve the problem, and let alone solve the problem to start normalizing the relations between the two sides, or to start normalizing the relations among the actors involved. When you don't have this the environment, of course, I mean, I don't have at least any belief that, you know, something may come out of the you know, the prospective dinner. But having said that, of course, the leaders engaging in a dialogue, I mean, it's important. I value that, because there is no alternative to dialogue. And the Turkish Cypriot side also proposed, I think, of course, I mean, this is what we read in the news, the convening of a four-party meeting as well. So also involving, yeah, also involving Turkey and Greece, maybe, you know, in this political environment. I mean, may open up a channel for
why the
communication.
Turkish Cypriot side does not like the British now? I mean, there is.
I think there is not such a thing. I mean, I don't know
why
why the leaders, I mean, why the Turkish Cypriot leadership didn't propose a five-party but a four-party. I mean, that's their consideration, of course. But,
okay. So, Mr. Mavroyiannis, do you want to answer the questions?
Yes, a couple of things. First, very clearly, this mention of the 4+1 is meant to create disorientation. And Mr. Tatar knows that Greek Cypriots will never accept this format. This is why he proposed it. So it goes without saying for us, because, I mean, why don't we speak about the 5+1 as we did in Crown Montana, in other situations? But because he knows that the 4 is not acceptable, so he proposes it. Now, the other thing is that, you know, the
Greek Cypriot side
will never accept 4.
No, does not do the same. I mean, proposing
no,
things
it's another
that
story.
it's...
We're talking about this particular issue which was raised.
Okay.
So, now, the fact that we have this dinner is something. Of course, you know how painful it was to come now in the middle of October with something which was supposed to happen in August, in preparation for the contacts of the Secretary General with everybody in the General Assembly, and with a view to convene a kind of 5+1, ideally in October. Now, we have this in October, and I suppose, nobody knows, but it's true that Mr. Christodoulidis wants to discuss the state of play and how we move forward. Mr. Tatar said that he wants this meeting to be about discussing areas of cooperation, migration, energy, electricity, these kind of things. So I suppose that the Secretary General will try to achieve two things. One is to have everybody accepting that this is not the end of the process, and second, that Maria Angela Olkin-Cuellar could continue her mission. Now you have all the context around. You have, as Ozdil was saying, the idea that and I'm answering Angelina's question. Political will, we don't know. What we know is that slowly, the political space for negotiation is being built up. When this will come to a situation where real negotiation will start and where this political space will also create the political will, we don't know. You will hear that, as Ozdil was saying, next year we have elections in the north. Probably the leadership will change. Situation is changing here and there. But certainly now we are in a situation where the Greco-Turkish dialogue is helping towards the creation of this space. The overall context is helping. What Guterres is doing is also helping in creating this space. How all this will work out, we cannot really predict, but at least there is a prospect slowly to build something. Now, we need also to understand that political space in itself is never enough. Never enough. And we had a very painful experience with the Annan Plan, where you had a real political space which was created, and you had, for instance, Mr. Demirtas, who was considered the most hardliner, that couldn't, escape. He was there. He was negotiating. I was negotiating with him. But political will for a solution? No. The same thing you would hear about Tasos Papadopoulos. He was there, he was accepting everything, and we thought that the way forward would be to come up with a third-party intervention and an arbitration. This didn't work, because if you cannot create a real political will with the parties in Cyprus, you are doomed. So we need to bear this in mind, and whatever we do, we need to continue having or building or creating the political will, which will happen only if you have at the end of the day a win-win situation. It's not through threats, through, you are going to have this and that will manage, but you can build, replace the vicious circle with a virtuous one, and this will allow, eventually to reach a settlement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So you commented Ozdil's proposal, but he's absent. Mr. Menelaou?
We talk all the time. So
I know, but the rest of the people, they don't know. Mr. Menelaou?
Yes, thank you. 4 brief comments from my part. First, with regard to incorporating new elements in the process and the methodology, the ideas about consequences and gain, not going back to the status quo, my comment would be that there is also an accumulated experience with regard to what had worked in the past in terms of the process and the methodology, and how the process was structured, and it has in the end been successful and productive. And there is also experience from unproductive elements that were incorporated in past processes that have not worked. So I believe that there are lessons to be drawn also with regard to that and what should be done in the future. Then with regard to the formats and so on, the only comment that I would want to make is that there is an upcoming meeting of the UNSG with the leaders of the 2 communities. And with regard to potential outcome, the effort from our part is going to be to contribute constructively so that it produces next tangible steps forward in the direction of reviving the political process and the prospect for a solution. On Greek-Turkey relations, our view is that the more they can produce, the better it will be for the Cyprus problem as well, and vice versa. And with regard to the respective roles and how much is in the hands of Turkey and in the hands of the Turkish Cypriot community and the current Turkish Cypriot leadership, my comment would be that there is obviously a role that can be played also by the Turkish Cypriot community, despite the most decisive, I believe, role that will have to be exercised by Turkey. But this can be eventually exercised if there is a political will for it to be undertaken. If there is no political will for it to be undertaken, it can naturally not be exercised, especially in the direction that we aspire to go. But it would be very interesting, and there have been comments from people that are better placed to assess what is going on inside the Turkish Cypriot community. It would be very interesting to follow very closely the developing dynamics in the social and political field within the Turkish Cypriot community. And lastly, with regard to political will and whether it is there from all involved, I believe that everyone is being judged and will eventually be judged by its deeds, and that also this is not an effort whose outcome is going to be determined at the level of a blame game. I believe that it is going to be, and at least our focus is for it to be determined at the level of substance and to have an outcome. And there is ample proof, I believe, of the efforts that we have undertaken so far, so that we contribute positively in this direction for the revival of the effort, for the appointment of a personal envoy, for identifying mutually beneficial factors, for expressing the political message that we are here to work so that we create win-win conditions and so on and so forth. So it's a continuous effort, and we would need to persist and to work consistently and see where we will be able to get.
Thank you. We don't have much time, but since we took the first two questions, do we have more questions? Okay. Yes.
Hi, my name is Kostas Irodotou. I come from Limassol. And I have a question.
Is he coming from Limassol?
I have no clue.
Ah, because you pointed.
I don't understand Mavroyiannis because I'm very
Yeah. Okay, the question.
We are all from Limassol.
No, we are not from Limassol.
Well, my mother is from Limassol.
So they are from Limassol. Yes, please, the question.
I think we're trying to solve a very big problem that keeps piling up and becoming more and more complicated as time goes by. Now it's the energy sector. Some other powers saw this 50 years ago maybe, and they planned everything ahead. But I think we're trying to solve this huge problem that is piling up, and it becomes ever more complicated. And maybe the way to solve the problem is by saying, okay, let's pretend the problem is solved. Let's just pretend for one day that the problem is solved. We keep talking about our partners, the Turkish Cypriots. I disagree with this approach. I think we should start thinking of partners as the Turkish, as the Greeks. These should be partners. And we should start maybe acting like we have a solution. How about discussing with the northern side? I hate the north and the south. For me, Cyprus is one, but let's see, okay, how do we control our borders? Let's start from the very basic things. How about the Turkish coming to Cyprus without a visa? As a first step.
Sorry, you mean to deal with low politics issues instead of settlement?
Forget the big problem. Let's pretend this there is
The problem is solved.
And let's pretend that Cyprus is Europe as a stepping stone to Europe for this amalgamation of people. We allow the Turkish to come to Cyprus without any visa. Wouldn't that be a good first step in getting the people know each other? Because I think the first time I met
Let's have a party together.
the first time I met a Turkish person in my life when I was in Canada, I was terrified. I thought
Yes,
they would eat me.
okay. I understand. Yes, please.
Just very quick, Sinemadar, thank you so much. I have a question for Mr. Mavroyiannis.
Andreas. You know, Mavroyiannis means Black John. So it turns everything to black. Yes.
Okay.
We have 11
No,
minutes.
no, no. We will finish on time. Don't worry.
There's a break, so if there's interest, you can take like...
We need a break also. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, please.
sorry.
Sorry.
I was wondering if you could elaborate what you said at the end of your final input, that political will we do not know, but slowly political space is emerging.
Yes.
I find the choice of the word emerging interesting.
Yes.
Because it suggests basically a life of its own.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you could elaborate on what do you think that triggering it, that this emergence of political space, exactly why in this moment, but not last year or the year before.
Just a moment. We have another question? No. Okay. The Limassol. Ah, okay.
Question about lessons learned from the past. In the aftermath of the announcement, the 76% of people say no. It's a very useful lesson for us as to how a distorted narrative can become mainstream and really poison public dialogue.
Poison?
And really can poison public dialogue
Okay,
and
the public dialogue.
assessment of something.
Yeah.
I think that we are already missing the boat. Even if we manage to set the negotiations and come up with a good outcome maybe in the next 2 or 3 years, we're risking presenting an excellent plan and still being rejected. And my question to the panel is, why don't we start now working with public opinion? Let's say that, this is a separate process we need to start now. We need to start the public dialogue. We need to involve third tier, the civil society, establish a bi-communal relationship, a bi-directional relationship, so that when the process is established, we can have a transparent process. And then that if we make people feel that they are taking part in this process, it will become more on their own rather than risking people feeling that something is imposed on them. So I think we need to start taking steps now. And the question is what we should start doing.
Okay. I had a question, by the way, about the secrecy or transparency during the process, but okay, Andreas?
No, I believe that the world today is in a situation of a deadlock. And the crisis of the UN and the relevance of the UN and what is happening in our region and beyond with Ukraine, etc. We are at a watershed moment where we need to decide which way we're going to go. And in this equation, where Ipek mentioned the elections in the United States, what will happen in the north next year, in Greco-Turkish relation, the orientation of the European Union. There are countless factors that create a lot of uncertainty. So, and it is very important in this equation, and I believe that this is what, for instance, Turkey is doing. And this is where you have a very slight change in the approach of Turkey. Turkey does not want, in the current juncture, be held responsible for nothing happening on the Cyprus issue. This creates a glimmer of hope, creates a little space. The same happens with what is happening in other parts of the world and the political context, including in Cyprus, bearing in mind that even Mr. Kadar, who understands and appreciates, and I'm building a bit of what Ozdil Nami was saying earlier, he understands that the ground is moving under his feet when it comes to the elections next year, and most probably he's not the preferred candidate of Turkey right now. So there are a lot of factors like that. And, adding all those factors together, you have a bit of a space which is being created and which might, at the end of the day, allow the resumption of the negotiations, and if you have the goodwill and the, if you like, the acceptance of what you need to do is to cover the last remaining mile, then yes, you can move forward. You know that until now, for instance, and there is this ongoing debate, you know, we start where we left in Crans-Montana, and then you ask, where did we live in Crans-Montana? And then you are going to have as many people, or even double the answers, if you like. But the matter of the fact remains that, for instance, we, the Greek Cypriot community, the 5th and the 6th July, we submitted written proposals accepting all the points of the Secretary General and giving specific content. So, can the Greek Cypriots say now, yes, we start, but we start where we were the 30th and not the 6th and not the 7th? You know, there are these kind of games. The important thing is to be able to build on where we have left, not only in the negotiation at the time, but all the convergences that happened before, and somehow I would add something fundamental. A bit afterwards, Ipek was with me in Berlin in November 2019. Let me tell you that in the dinner of the Secretary General with Anastasiadis and Akinci, there were two outstanding issues concerning governance, and we solved them there. We solved them there. So it's possible to find, if you like, the common ground.
What were they?
We don't have time now. I can tell you. If you have time, I can tell you, no problem.
But it's
Now,
2 words, I think.
no, it's not 2 words.
Ah,
So
okay.
the 2 issues were co-decision of President and Vice President,
Yeah.
and whether it goes to the deadlock resolving mechanism or whether it's a veto.
Yes.
And the other one was the positive vote of the Turkish
Yeah.
Cypriots in all collective decisions. Those were the issues.
30 seconds. Okay, thank you.
Yes, but wait. Now we have the second question was about presenting a good plan. You know, the fundamental difference, Petro, is that in 2004, it was something that was coming from outside. It was not a freely negotiated settlement. What we decided in February 2014 with the joint declaration was that only a fully negotiated and agreed framework can go to the referenda with the leaders standing behind. And if you have this new situation, you understand that the chances are not the same. Here you have the leadership. In 2004, by the way, let me tell you that neither leader was behind, okay? It was not only Papadopoulos, Negotiator was against too. So, and then last point, you know, I'm sorry to tell you, but there is in the public opinion a kind of a myth that, you know, we're negotiating behind closed doors, etc. Let me tell you that there is nothing secret. On all the fundamental issues, everybody knows, it's easy accessible to know where we stand. I mean, I myself never refused to answer any question on what are we doing on this, on that, where do we stand.
What happened? We were asking you in Crans-Montana, you did not answer.
No,
You were not
we're
replying in your
I'm talking
phone.
about the positions. I don't like the anecdotal reference. You know,
Okay.
he said this and then the other, you know, but tell me one issue where we don't know where do we stand.
But
And
we
what-
know by Ramdan Sondra.
Okay.
That's the problem.
But we know exactly. We know exactly what is the situation about guarantees, about troops, about governance, about about property, about territorial, about the treatment of Turkish citizens. All points we know, and everybody knows.
Okay.
You know, I don't know where there is a secret or people think that we are doing things behind their backs. No. And I'm a former negotiator. Now I don't know what Menelaos does.
When he starts negotiating, we will ask him. Okay, Ipek.
Well, I have a different opinion on that because...
Whether he was answering his phone, I can tell you.
No, but this lady here, Ipek, was the controller in the negotiations. So when we were wondering, this was what we discussed, we are turning to her, Ipek, and she would tell us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. So I take it as a compliment. Thank you. So, well, yeah, of course, there were a lot of, articles, leaked news all over the newspapers, but and also with regard to articulation of positions by the leaders. Okay, the two leaders were, of course, talking about their respective positions about the issues. But what I meant, for example, personally, was not that. We need a structured mechanism to ensure civic engagement, meaning turning the negotiations into a reciprocal, a reciprocal practice activity where the public is fed, by the stakeholders, and the public then also provides feedback. So it's like negotiations, happen in a vacuum in Cyprus. The leaders talk about the positions, the leaders make statements, and we expect people to know everything. But they are actually, I think, not interested in knowing positions. They, as you said, know by heart, have inside things about a particular, issue. What is needed is to be able to show people how a solution will resonate with their daily lives, how the issues which are being discussed will have a reflection on their lives. So this is what I mean, and for that, we really need to include other layers, other tracks to track one, and start building peace between the two communities, which I think we are already too late, because we, since 2000, I also met with a Greek Cypriot when I was 21 years old for the first time, some, thousands of kilometers away, not unfortunately here on the island. So we have reciprocal crossings since 2003. Yes, we have, crossings which are increasing, every day or for certain periods. Let's say the trade volume, what I learned from the panel yesterday on Green Line regulation, it's decreasing actually nowadays, not increasing. But there is no real dialogue between the two communities. There is no reconciliation, no peace-building effort, which will, somehow force them to think about their common future. I think dialogue is very important, being able to, get in touch, in real touch with the members of the other community, and start, thinking in more broader terms in that sense.
Excuse me, this is very important. I have to interject here because I couldn't agree more with you.
But we don't have comments. We don't have comments.
Yeah, one small point. What's the question? I'll turn it into a question. Question?
Yes, shortly. We are out of time.
Yes. The question is, how ready are the communities to be real democratic? Because I think the solution in the Cypriot problem will not be from the leaders. I think the leadership are corrupt in many respects based on interest and all sorts of things. The solution will come like a river on a problem, and that will be the people. But how ready are we as societies, patriarchal societies, as you said, both of us, to relinquish this power from the top down to bottom up? approach.
Yes, but I think Ipek mentioned something the first round about the civil society, but can I ask Menelaou, Mr. Menelaou, can we start from low politics issue? I mean, without negotiating a full settlement?
As I have said already, we do have a track 2, which is ongoing, and these type of issues are being discussed. And
which type of issues?
And there is also interaction, such as the environment, such as the education, on which we had experienced setbacks, unfortunately.
You mean the technical committees?
Yes, the technical committees. And there are processes that are taking place also at the level of the civil, so through the initiatives of the civil society as well, which would have to be appreciated and further reinforced. And if there is more room for them to be further empowered, yes, why not? This is something that we should look into and do more as we continue on this effort to revive the overall prospect. And in creating what has been described before as the necessary space for a revived process to have the possibility to be successful. I agree, I believe it's a valid point that has been made with regard to the need for upfront interaction with the civil society and for legitimate concerns to be taken on board, and for the society to be given the sense that legitimate concerns are being taken on board in the discussions. And yes, absolutely, I concur with what has been said, that there are no things taking place behind the backs of the people and of the society. There are obviously certain aspects, as in every negotiation, that are being governed by confidentiality, but that is not to the detriment of transparency. And lastly, with regard to how we are approaching and how we have engaged, what I can confirm from my part is that our engagement with the UNSG and with his personal envoy has been fully consistent with our expressed position to continue the effort from where the previous one had been left off, which comprises the basis, the fundamental basis that I have mentioned, the convergences, and the 6 points of the UNSG, and we will continue to work within this spirit and within this context.
Okay, thank you very much. Since we don't have any more time, and I hate doing some summaries, wrap up, I would like to leave you with a message from what I heard, and you can confirm or maybe I'm wrong. There is a positive space, there is a will, there are some ideas which maybe not be liked by everybody, and we have the civil society and the women who are willing to be engaged in the process. So what we need is the process to get started. The dinner, the upcoming dinner, will not be maybe the beginning, but it can be a sign for this. And we will be looking forward this dinner and the next Cyprus Forum. I would like also to thank the organizers for inviting me to moderate this panel. I hope you all liked it and enjoyed it, also here in presence and online. It was on Facebook page, I think. So thank you very much and have a good day ahead. Thank you very much. Also the speakers, Ipek, Borman, Andreas, Mavroyiannis, Ozdil, Nami, and Menelaos. Thank you.